to another edition of Bottle Rocket News. I'm your host, David Harrison, and today we're going to be talking about WWDC 2022, what we saw, what we heard, and what we're planning on building. Gathered here with a esteemed panel of mobile architects from Bottle Rocket, Russell Mirabelli, Brendon Hall, and Tyler Milner. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, how are you today?
Oh, I'm excited. This is going to be a lovely session to tell everyone exactly what the heck is WWDC.
I'm sure we're all coming very excited from the conference. Obviously, it was wrapped up recently.
A lot of good stuff to talk about.
Yeah, excellent. So, Russell, can you tell the audience what is WWDC and what has been happening with WWDC since the good old pandemic hit us?
Right. So WWDC is the affectionate name that we use for the Apple Worldwide Developers Conference. And so we're going to be saying WWDC all day today, but just so you know what that stands for. And this year was very similar to last year in format. Last year, Apple had reimagined the way that they presented WWDC in that they provided it entirely online with a limited section where they had some live audiences, but all of the sessions were actually were pre-recorded to provide nice bite-sized amounts of information. And there's three big parts of WWDC. There's a keynote, which is where most people hear about the things that happened. Then there's what I call the real keynote, which is the platform State of the Union. Remember, this is a developers conference, and in the platform State of the Union, that's where they dig into the technical aspects of the things that are being released. And then there were 150 short sessions that they released. And these are highly technical, highly detailed explanations of all of the new features that are coming out. Now, obviously, in the space of a week, even a team of 3 people, it's very hard to get in all of that content. But we found the highlights, and we've been watching those technical sessions, some of which are as short as 9 minutes, some of which are an hour.
Yeah.
Oh, that's impressive. That's impressive. Thanks for bringing the audience up to speed on what actually WWDC is. And yes, you're going to be hearing WWDC the whole time we're here. And it's to bring you into what's actually happening and what are things that we believe are be most important from a business standpoint that's going to help you grow your mobile applications within this space. So, Brendon,
yes, sir.
What did we see this year in WWDC?
From the platform standpoints, there was a lot. So there's a lot of updates from the iOS themselves, along with features that include like passkeys that will improve the user experience, that we won't have to eventually remember our passwords and incorporate a lot of that stuff. There was the new lock screen for the iOS as well. I'll take this platform. I don't want to spoil everybody else. I'll let them go over the Swift and other stuff. But there was a ton of stuff with Mac updates as well regarding the OS. I'll briefly just touch on that, but mostly for iOS developers, there was a lot of features that I'm particularly excited about, but I will dig into that later, and I'll let Russell go into like maybe Swift updates.
Awesome.
So at a top level, the most exciting thing about Swift changes, it has to do with SwiftUI, and specifically one phrase that I heard repeated several times: comprehensive adoption within Apple. SwiftUI has been evolving over the past couple of years. It's an exciting way of developing apps. And we'll come back to this in a minute, but the fact that it's been brought in to Apple wholesale is a big deal.
Really feels like it's out of beta now, right? We had first 2 or 3 years, it was, still very, rough around the edges. And, only, I think, a handful of Apple's apps, had actually been written in SwiftUI or even used it at all. But now that they're saying that it's actually something that they're using internally, that really means that it's really time for widespread adoption among all developers.
And this follows Apple's model for Swift as a whole also. When Swift when Swift was rolled out in version 1.0 several years ago, it was rough and it was a difficult experience for early adopters. But after 2 iterations, it started to become a viable tool for building our apps. And now we rely upon it extensively. So I expect the same pattern to hold true here.
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest bugbears that they've tackled this year was some of the navigation stack problems. Now that the deep linking, that was one of the major issues that were maybe holding it back from commercial viability. So I'm excited to see that kind of feature coming in as well.
So you know what? I'm gonna just I'll say, why don't we dig into that just a little bit, because this is something that's worth talking about. One of the things, and I'll start it off and then I'll hand it over to Tyler. One of the things that has been the biggest holdouts over widespread SwiftUI adoption isn't the actual user interface, but it's the broad navigation of an app. Apps that are more than 1 to 3 screens, which is the kind of experiences that we build here at Bottle Rocket, tend to have very complex navigation. And SwiftUI, as it existed in prior to WWDC this year, didn't handle complex navigation, meaning moving from one part of the app to the next in a comprehensive way very well.
Yeah, I believe from my brief looking at it, it looks like they took a static approach of being able to incorporate the navigation that you're deep linking into. Say, for example, if you have a navigation link or a notification from an app or something that you're launching the app from an exterior source, that is a lot simpler now with some of that technology that they've introduced this year. So I'm very excited about that because it was interesting to keep track of state. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and speaking of SwiftUI, one other aspect of it that I think it'd be very very beneficial for especially enterprise customers, right? Are some of the UI elements that Apple's now made available for us to really make things like charts. That's one of the big ones, right? Is Apple released a whole framework for building all kinds of charts in SwiftUI, and it's kind of an example of what Apple, like Russell was saying, they're following kind of the pattern that they established with Swift. Is now is the time to jump on the SwiftUI train, because they are releasing frameworks now that are only written in SwiftUI. So that's really the direction that they're taking this. One other example as well is they now have support for multi-column tables, right? So think of like spreadsheets, things like that. So a lot of enterprise apps where they're heavily data driven, you might need to graph some things, bar graphs, line graphs, things like that, or have tables of information. That should be much, much easier now than spending weeks trying to create all of that yourself.
Anecdotally, Tyler, we have one particular client where they needed that kind of charting ability in their app now, and we dedicated quite a bit of development time to it, bringing it in with SwiftUI, which incidentally isn't released to the public. These features aren't released to the public until sometime in the fall. So while we can build with it, we can't make it available to our clients just yet. It's a matter of hours instead of days.
Very nice.
So it's a big deal. And it also provides a really good design approach where Apple is showing us not only what could be done, but how they would like us to envision building apps using SwiftUI. It's important because, like you said, now's the time to get on board. At Bottle Rocket, we tend to build for one less current version of iOS than the most recent version. So a lot of SwiftUI has not been really stable. In iOS 15, the current version, it has been and now we're going to be able to target that N-1 release with SwiftUI. Even if we can't use everything that was released at WWDC this year, we now have that clarity.
That's very nice. One of the things around the concept that you all are bringing up is the progression of the language and the progression of the framework that's going to help clients and customers better take advantage of some of the features that Apple is bringing to bear. And WWDC gave us another opportunity to see other frameworks that I'm really interested in. I'm going to target in some of my favorites here that I want to get a better understanding, and I want our customers to get a better understanding of the capabilities. So Tyler, can you take us through good old AR ScanKit and Room Plan?
Yes. So this is, it's nothing new for WWDC, right? For Apple to keep continuously making improvements to their AR and vision capabilities. So ScanKit and Room Plan, basically allow you to create models of the room, and easily identify features that are in the room. So your app can very easily identify where a door is, where a window is, things like that, which will lead to much more immersive AR experiences. And it's interesting, actually, 'cause as they've continued to make these improvements over time with ARKit and RealityKit and all of their AR flavored frameworks. To me, it really feels like they're laying the groundwork for something that's a rumor, right? But I think everyone pretty much expects it at this time, right? Which is the Apple glasses. We didn't really get, there's always a rumor every WWDC. I think for the past 5 years, maybe they've been, as rumors, weeks before, oh, they're going to announce the glasses product at WWDC. Well, it didn't happen this year, but we did get, definitely some developer support for apps for that glasses interface in the future, right? And so, ScanKit and Room Plan, definitely are going to be key to those apps in the future, to be able to intelligently place virtual objects in the room, put things on the walls. We have some other features as well coming down the pike as well. So app intents, data scanning, of course the M2 chip, which we might touch on some of those later. But I really think this is getting us one step closer to the glasses product and a whole new set of applications.
I mean, that would be absolutely impressive. One of the things that from a business perspective, if you look at within the retail space or CPG, this would be something that can be take on really easily and start applying some of those new applications and new techniques within that space. So Russell, talk to us about vision. Tell me what's happening in the world of vision. Well,
Vision has been part of the iOS experience for quite some time. They've had progression in their image recognition technology year on year. This year was really interesting, though, and I'm going to say this is one of those technical areas where they've provided better machine learning based recognition, but also the ability to identify where in an image a person is. Give a good silhouette of a person inside of an image. And this is all done on device, and that can't be overstated. This is not a multi-step process where image has to be processed remotely. This is all done on device in real time. They've also done a lot of unification inside their data recognition. So where you do things like barcode scanning, which is a very common thing, we're now able to interpret multiple barcodes at the same time in the same frame, as opposed to requiring the user to precisely line up where in the image a barcode might be.
Yeah. On top of that, sorry, go ahead.
No,
I'm just going to bring up on top of that, just utilizing that image technology that they've brought up. Live text is a huge new feature that's kind of come out where you can pull out information from those images, such as barcodes, but other things that, say, for example, product descriptions or phone numbers or other things that you can then document or action upon, such as calling a phone number or emailing somebody or whatever else, or a
And
hashtag. Yeah, go ahead.
And these aren't just available to consumers. That's the key thing about DubDub. It's not that they're saying live text exists and the user can go into their Photos app and highlight text. That's the past. They make these technologies available to every developer to access through robust APIs. There was one last thing that I wanted to talk about, though, as far as vision, which is they've really built up the debugging features, because it's a developers conference. And they have provided the ability, when I'm inspecting my code in the debugger to see how well is the recognizer working, I can visually see on the photograph where it sees all of these elements. And this is without me writing specialized scaffolding that is for development purposes only. The more time that I am not spending time writing code to figure out if my code was doing the right thing, but that is built into the debugging tools, the faster we're able to bring products to market.
That is absolutely impressive. One of the key applications for this, if you have a company, getting back to the enterprise space and how you can bring business values using vision, is field workers that are out there that are scanning and moving about different types of equipment that needs to be put in play, whether it's within a home, within other infrastructure, or within your entire business structure associated with even within a data center. Those things and ability to recognize and asset management and use this type of tool to allow you to change things out in the real time and don't have the buggy nature of having to send an image off to be processed. I think that is a real business value that particular upgrade is bringing to bear. One of the business values, and Brendon, you mentioned it a little bit, can you help the audience understand, the whole passkey thing? You say, hey, we can have, get by without knowing our passwords and the ability to do fun things associated with that. Help us understand, what does that mean? That means that my 27 character password don't need to memorize it anymore? Is that what you're telling me?
More or less. Before I dive too deep into like the Apple specifics, so basically it's an industry standard kind of revolution, you can put it, to where there's a lot of encryption and a lot of big companies that are collaborating together to come up with solutions that are much more secure, a singular solution that would you would not have to necessarily remember, and also you wouldn't have any kind of compromising email leaks or company compromises of your data wouldn't affect this kind of solution. So with passkeys are specifically iOS's solutions for this, and it basically incorporates the device's security like metrics with like Bluetooth. I believe it goes in with basically a digital fingerprint, if you will, that collaborates with the device and the website to then allow a single sign-on through the key themselves or the login process, to where you would just click or press the passkey option, and it would sign you in without having, it would just remember what your passkey is, and you would never have to remember it, and it would always be secure. There is one thing I will also note with this, there is a transitional period, so we have to still support the password and every other means of authentication until all of this is adopted, but it is a very bright future for a user to not have to worry about passwords or anything like that, or even two-factor authentication, because it won't even be necessary at that point.
There were two exciting things about this particular feature. The first is the demo during DubDub was not on an Apple device. It was logging into a website on a Windows PC. This is huge, because the demonstration that this is not something inside the Apple ecosystem exclusively, but this is a broad approach, is big. And the other thing that I would like to say is this is, to me, what this reminds me of most is USB. USB existed for many years before it became popular. The popularity was driven by the original Apple iMac. I was working in a space where we were selling USB peripherals at the time, and there was no market for USB until the day of the original iMac, and then USB flew off the shelves. I'm expecting the same kind of thing. It's not the definition, it's the participation and popularization that matter.
Yeah, and just to add to it a little bit, get a little bit more technical, right? As Brendon mentioned, right? Makes it like almost a one-touch experience, right? To sign in, either scanning like a QR code or using your fingerprint or your face, Touch ID, Face ID, those types of things. But the actual underlying technology is totally different than what we have right now with passwords. So typically, the way a password login would work, right, is the server is going to store your username and your password on the server, and you type in your password, and it checks it and validates it. Typically, those passwords, you don't ever want to store them in plain text. Of course, you want to have them, encryption in transit, but then also make sure you're hashing and salting the passwords when they're stored in the database, so that those database leaks, the passwords themselves aren't compromised. And reversing hashes, at least right now, is still pretty computationally expensive. So it's not something that's very easy to do. But takes a whole different approach. This follows the approach of what we have right now on the web, as far as a lot of security mechanisms, public and private key cryptography. So actually now what happens is that website or that backend server, that database, is actually storing the public key rather than the a version of the password. And public keys are meant to be public; they're meant to be shared. So it's a much more secure mechanism than what we had with passwords.
Awesome. So I want to take a step toward the consumer for 1 second here, just 1 second, and we'll bring it back to our bread and butter, which is in more the enterprise space. But Tyler, there was some fun stuff happening with CarPlay. Can you take us through?
Absolutely, this is one of my favorite features that Apple talked about, and they dedicated quite an extensive section to it in the keynote and the platform State of the Union. So first off, we have a couple of additional types of apps now that you can create for CarPlay. You can create a fueling app for obviously the main use case for that is helping to find gas stations and that type of stuff. They had something similar for EVs. Now they have one for the old legacy internal combustion engines. So they haven't left them out totally, even though EV is definitely the transition I think Apple wants everyone to go. And then the other type of app is a driving task app. So think of very simple tasks that help with the drive itself. So things like controlling the accessories in the car, the climate control, things like that can all now be brought forward into the CarPlay interface, rather than having to kind of back out of your CarPlay experience, go adjust those settings, or of course, if you got the old hardware knobs, you'll still be able to use those as well. Or the other use case for these driving tasks app would be tasks at the start or the end of a drive, right? So maybe like a mileage calculator, so that you can get reimbursed for your mileage and things like that. But the big thing with CarPlay is now it's actually extending beyond that main infotainment screen. So more and more vehicles are coming out with multiple screens. They'll have one in the instrument gauge cluster. They'll have, of course, the main infotainment screen. Probably they'll have more screens in the future, but you can actually now CarPlay actually has the chance to take over that entire experience inside of the car. All of your screens, take over your speedometer, odometer, fuel gauges, and what's really interesting is they showed several screenshots of actually very detailed information, the actual torque, the horsepower, of course, your RPMs. And it's interesting to me because I actually just bought a kind of a specialized device. They call it Scan Tools, right? That you actually plug into your OBD2 port, and you can read a lot of those diagnostics information. So I'm very interested to see kind of how that will play out, and possibly even make some of those, that fancy several $100 scan tool I just bought might make it obsolete. But it's an interesting approach that they're taking here. Apple Car is another one of those examples where it's a rumor for several years now. When's the Apple Car coming? When are they going to announce it? But now we're kind of starting to see potentially their approach that they're taking is starting to, really develop that Apple Car, but do it from the inside out, right? Rather than releasing a whole car product. CarPlay is now really taking over your entire car, all of your screens, all of your instrument gauges. It can all be run by CarPlay now.
That is impressive. And you bring a lot of things in from the telemetry side. You mentioned with OBDP2 port that gets a lot of telemetry information, and to have that readily available and the ability to ingest that and give it into an application that can be viewable, it's powerful for the driver, right? It's bringing you into, I'm about to date myself, the audience, but it brings us into the Jetsons, right? So you're getting you're getting some of the fun futuristic things within the common vehicle, if you will, outside of the EV models that are a little bit advanced. So I think that's going to be a huge thing going forward within that consumer space. But we're not leaving the consumer space just yet. iPad OS had some nice things to come out, Russell. Tell us about it.
The coolest thing about iPad OS this year was it's being promoted to a desktop replacement. It's been in a transitional state for quite some time, and several of our enterprise customers have been looking at it in this way, where it is being approached as a replacement for a full-fledged desktop. You have the extra mobility, the touch input, price points, all of these things that make it an appealing platform. But they keep upping the game on the iPad to make it a reliable desktop experience with better toolbars and, excitingly, some better collaboration tools. Now, those collaboration tools are going to be slightly available in iOS on the phones, but it's mostly aimed at collaboration inside of iPad OS. And those collaboration experiences don't have to be invented from app to app. They are integrated with their messages experience and the other ways that you can connect with other users.
Very nice. Very nice. This seems like and of course we say this every year with DubDub, this seems to be a very compelling DubDub, right? There's a lot of things that came out in this DubDub, and we're going to shift back to one that we talked about a little bit earlier. So Brendon, going back to our buddy SwiftUI, There's a lot of fun stuff that's happening here. So help our audience understand the real power this is going to bring to the table.
Absolutely. So a lot of the new features with SwiftUI this year, I think Russell briefly mentioned charts and the ability to quickly do those things. But there's additional stuff such as like app intents. So app intents allows you to kind of openly expose your app, for example, to a spotlight search. If you're looking for a game or a game update, your app can take charge of that. Or if you're messing around with shortcuts, and allow your device to do automation with your app as an open endpoint. That's a very powerful tool that came out this year for SwiftUI. There's incorporation of different layouts. So they have grid layouts. I believe they have it's a gridding system for collection views that you can then make it more autonomous, or maybe even newspaper-like, if you're familiar with different elements of different sizes being in different collections. So a lot more customization in that field. They made lists load lazily, so you're actually able to scroll infinitely with a bit more efficiency as far as memory with SwiftUI now. There's a lot of stuff that's a lot of stuff that's been updated. I mentioned before, as far as the deep linking, there's a ton of stuff that SwiftUI is very much maturing, and we can see that this year.
You know, one of the things that excites me most, there's a new calendar. And I know that sounds a little bit funny. I don't mean the calendar app. I mean, within our apps, we're able to present a calendar. And a few years ago, we were using a couple of scrolling wheels to select a date. And then we recently got a calendar where you could select a date. We can now select multiple dates on that calendar.
True. Yeah.
And the reason why that's exciting is that calendars are actually incredibly challenging to implement correctly. And so the more that we have these tools to quickly build correct implementations of a calendar, where we are building upon well-established libraries, you know, done by people with deep understanding. I now have a team of engineers who have worked for me to make a good multi-select calendar that feels right at home in iOS.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the picker wheel, Russell, and it wasn't too long ago either that we actually got a replacement for the entering in times and things like that using the picker wheel. We actually got the ability to kind of select a time and type it in. So it's interesting that that picker wheel that's been around for so long, it seems like it's on its way out, right? We're finally getting some better UI for those types of actions.
Very nice. Well, audience, we are coming close to the end here, and I don't want to end this, but there's so much stuff to talk about when we talk about WW 2022. So what I'm going to do here is give the esteemed panel 1 minute each to get the one thing they took from WW 2022. So Russell, what's that one thing that you took from WW 2022?
We've got new tools to help us see multiple versions of our app at the same time. This means that when we are designing for adaptive text on the screen so that people who need additional larger text sizes, as a developer, I can see the impact of those changes on all of the available sizes all at once, meaning there are no more excuses for not properly supporting this key accessibility feature.
Very nice. Very nice. Critical juncture in that statement. No more excuses. All right. Brendon, the one thing.
Oh, it's hard to pick, but I guess I will just be really excited for the commercial viability of SwiftUI and everything that comes along with that. And then a very quick note of the revolution technology of passkeys.
We know who has a stake in the game on passkeys. Tyler.
Well, I already mentioned it. I think, the writing's on the wall for those Apple glasses. We're taking one step closer, right? But me personally, I'm always in love with the developer features and developer improvements that they continue to make to both Xcode as well as, all their development technologies. One thing that stood out to me was their Xcode Cloud continuous integration platform. So no longer is it in beta, right? It's actually or maybe I guess you could call it maybe an extended beta, right? So all developer accounts will actually have access to that base tier plan through the end of 2023 for free. So it's something that we can start to try out. It's from some of the sessions I was watching, it makes it really easy to start really taking advantage of CI capabilities. There's no more excuse not to have, even for personal projects, right? That's where I'm personally excited to use it on, is there's no more excuse not to go ahead and set up a CI. It's fully integrated with Xcode. It gives you a great dashboard to get a lot of insights into how your builds are performing, how much time they're taking, what actions they're taking. Then as well, related to that, with the Swift Package Manager, as part of the Swift language, we now have package plugins as well. So now you can actually write Swift code to help with that CI process as well. So, very interesting to me to kind of see, advances in that aspect of, the way that we actually build and deploy apps.
Well, thank you all. I mean, this has been, eye-opening for me. Some of the key features that are coming out of WW22 will affect us in ways that we will see down the road. I'm with you on the glasses, Tyler. I'm waiting for that to actually come to fruition. There's a lot of things we can do with this build from WW 2022. There's a lot of things we can help you with to get you over the hump.
Absolutely.
We have the capabilities here at Bottle Rocket. We have the knowledge, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you all.